Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. If you've never been to the show before, if you've never listened to a single episode and this is your first, welcome to the show. We have some fun talking about Star Wars. We have fun talking about the Clone Wars, games, everything Star Wars related. You know, we do it right here. There's almost too much to cover, especially with our series going on called Clone Wars Talk. And I'm going to get a little more into that when we start, but I just want to say a big welcome to anyone who's new. And if you have a question, a big question lingering of what is the Clone Wars, that's our focus today. So happy to have you. Let's begin.
Another happy landing.
All right, so welcome back. I'm your host, Josh, and if you've never been to the show, like I said before, welcome. We're going to be answering a big question today for anybody who has this question. I'm sure most people out there listening have probably heard of the Clone Wars. If you've been watching the Clone Wars and you're just listening to this episode for the heck of it, then bear with me here. This is probably everything you already know, but you may catch something that you didn't know if you have never seen the Clone Wars before and you're still making your way through the show. I might be dropping a few kind of tidbits that might spoil some things for you if you've been completely in the dark about the show or what have you. So just a forewarning there. But for those of you who are probably not going to see the show, and you have a lingering question as to say, like, what is the Clone Wars? Or for those of you who are thinking about watching the show, maybe this is for you. And I'm not going to drop any massive spoilers, but I am going to talk enough about it that you can kind of get the idea. And, some things may or may not, some big plot points might be spoiled, but it's nothing crazy. If you've seen the live action films, you already know what happens anyway. So it's not a big deal. So, I guess what I want to start with is just that big question, like, what is the Clone Wars? And this goes back to a line in 1977, Star Wars A New Hope. Back then, it was just called Star Wars. And we're going to take a look at a little clip here that I want to play for you. So just keep your ears peeled because there's a very tiny little subtle mention of the Clone Wars right here.
No, my father didn't fight in the wars. He was a navigator on a spice freighter.
That's what your uncle told you. He didn't hold with your father's ideals, thought he should have stayed here and not gotten involved.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
Yes. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
I wish I'd known him.
He was the best star pilot in the galaxy. And a cunning warrior. I understand you've become quite a good pilot yourself. A good friend.
He asks him about how if he's fought in the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars is this massive galactic war that basically happened before the events of A New Hope. This war lasted about 3 years long, and it was it ended approximately 19 to 20 years prior to A New Hope, prior to Episode 4. So this war, basically, if you've seen the prequels, if you've seen episodes 1 through 3, you'll know that the political unrest in the Republic caused a civil war between the Republic and the break-off faction called the Separatist Alliance. And the Separatist Alliance was a group of senators from various planets that Count Dooku, who at this point is an ex-Jedi Master, secretly a Sith apprentice to Palpatine, who is currently the Chancellor of the Republic, working his magic, behind the scenes, pulling all the strings, and Dooku is playing the other side of the coin. He's basically deceived all these senators into believing that the Republic is corrupt, which is true. However, it works to his advantage because now they control both sides of any political faction that you can possibly be a part of, unless you're a neutral planet. And so it's a very interesting plot line because this entire war, the entire purpose of the Clone Wars was to essentially create unrest, galactic unrest in the galaxy, and it was a part of Palpatine's grand plan, which was the end goal was to basically obtain control over the galaxy, and also simultaneously wipe out the entire Jedi Order. So, I guess if we were to start with kind of what other people know about the Clone Wars, I mean, this thing was galactic wide. This war left scars on the galaxy that lasted, years. I mean, there's even in the sequel era of the timeline, if we're taking a look at The Force Awakens and so on and so forth, any material around that timeline, if you've seen Star Wars Resistance, or if maybe you've heard of it, it's the cartoon show, if you've read any of the novels or the comics around that time period, you'll know that the Clone Wars has this long-lasting effect, and there's remnants of the Clone Wars on various planets. There's still people around who have potentially fought in the Clone War, and this was a big deal. Like the Clone Wars was basically our equivalent to World War II. It was the biggest thing that happened in the galaxy in approximately 1,000 years of peace, pretty much, so to speak. I mean, the Sith have been extinct for over 1,000 years prior to the Phantom Menace, which was the 1999's Episode 1. So it's been a very long time since the Jedi have had a real enemy to fight, and now they're fighting the shadows. They're fighting the Phantom Menace, who's Palpatine. They don't know who the Sith Lord is. All they know is that Obi-Wan Kenobi has defeated this Sith apprentice on Naboo, and 10 years later, the Clone Wars begin. And out of nowhere, the Republic has this clone army that shows up on Kamino after Obi-Wan's investigation, and if you've seen Attack of the Clones, like, you'll know exactly like all the questions that are posed around this mysterious clone army that was created for the Republic by a Jedi by the name of Master Sifo-Dyas. And Master Sifo-Dyas was a Jedi at the time. A bit of a spoiler here, but he was a Jedi at the time who basically saw the downfall of the Jedi in visions, and his answer to that concern was to create an army that would be able to defend the Republic and to help the Jedi in battle when the time came to defend against the darkness, right? So little did he know that he was actually being manipulated, and the entire purpose of the clone army is not necessarily to defend the Jedi, but behind the scenes, Palpatine again working his goals to use the clone army to his advantage. So that's like there's a bit of a thing I'm gonna drop here as well if you've never seen the show. But you might be wondering, like after years of fighting this war together, 3 years to be exact, which is how long the Clone Wars lasts in a time period. How these clones were just at the snap of a finger able to betray their Jedi generals who they've befriended and fought beside as brother in arms for 3 years or so. And the reason behind that is actually revealed in the show. So block your ears out for the next 10 seconds if you don't want to know what it is. But basically, they've got inhibitor chips in their brain, which at the response of Protocol 66 are just essentially rendered completely mindless and forced into this habitat to basically kill the Jedi. Mentally, they're just unable to control themselves. So that's basically a plot line that's a plan that Dooku and Palpatine actually set in motion when the creation of the clone army was put into order. they basically used Sifo-Dyas to their advantage. And that's actually later on in the Clone Wars that does pop up in the season 6. It's a massive story arc. I believe it takes place over 6 episodes or something like that. But it's really cool. I think, as far as the in-universe things goes, like, everyone has been affected by this war. There's not a soul in the galaxy who doesn't know what the Clone Wars is. And, by the time of Luke Skywalker, here's a kid who was born at the very end of the Clone Wars, after the whole thing is over. And in a way, he's got a lot of questions. He's been born into a galaxy that's been scarred by this massive event. And out of this event has risen this, this tyranny, which is the Galactic Empire, ruled by Palpatine, and what we know as the government that the rebellion is trying to fight against and restore the Republic. So, in a way, I mean, the Clone Wars has been this has been around since the beginning. The fact that we actually got to see this as a chapter in the Skywalker saga, in a way, as an animated series, it's truly just like a gift from George Lucas, because this has been one of the first massive story plots that George had in his outline, that there would be this massive war that took place, which caused all this unrest, which caused this rebellion to be a thing in the first place. So if you love the original trilogy and you love those films, I honestly think that you'd love the Clone Wars as well. I mean, I know that there are some fans out there who aren't the biggest fan of the prequel films. I personally love them to death. Those are the ones that I grew up with. But quite frankly, I mean, like, even if you're not the craziest fan about those films, the Clone Wars is really catered to you. It's catered to every Star Wars fan in a way, because the Clone Wars is made by people who grew up with the original trilogy. Dave Filoni, the director of the show, the showrunner, basically, he was these days he's known as George Lucas's apprentice, because he spent so many years working closely by George Lucas's side on this show, and George would basically tell him what he wanted to do, and then Dave would have to come up with the idea with the writers, and they would have to figure out the stories and everything like that. So the entire show was actually a huge growing moment for Dave Filoni, and who is now one of the showrunners of The Mandalorian. So, I mean, his progression from going from Avatar: The Last Airbender all the way up until now, I mean, he's really had a lot of growth in his career, and that's all thanks to the Clone Wars and all thanks to George Lucas. So, I mean, we got a little bit of an interview here from George Lucas back in 2008. When the show first launched, they actually made a theatrical released film, animated film, which was basically a couple episodes all stitched together to make a theatrical film release kickoff for the show. It was, before it aired on Cartoon Network, they did this big 2008 Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie. The plot was about the Jedi having to rescue Jabba the Hutt's son and introduce characters like Ahsoka Tano and all that stuff. But I want to rewind a little bit further just to the very first time that people ever saw an animated show, which was at the time called Star Wars Clone Wars. And it was a 2D animated show on Cartoon Network, a miniseries, which was very quickly supposed to fill in some event gaps between episodes 2 and 3, around this time that Revenge of the Sith actually came out. And George actually does talk about this. He talks about how he was like, oh, it was so successful that we could actually put a little more time and money into this product and make something that was CG animated and looked a little more polished. They got the technology to do it. So let's take a listen to George here in this exclusive interview from 2008 talking about Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Why a animation versus a live action Star Wars?
Well, the Clone Wars are basically a footnote in the saga of Anakin Skywalker. The Clone Wars are basically a footnote in the saga of Anakin Skywalker. And that's what the features are about. It's really about Anakin and about his son. And it's very narrow focused. And it's about his descent into the dark side. I wanted to do something, when I was doing episode 3, I wanted to do something that involved the Clone Wars. I was disappointed I didn't get to make a movie about the Clone Wars because it doesn't have anything to do with Anakin Skywalker, really, except he becomes friends with Obi-Wan. So we decided to do a little animated show for Cartoon Network with very talented animator Gindi. And that then turned into, gee, this is so good, let's make it into a bigger animated TV series that's actually a half an hour in a regular show, and I can use CG animation, which we developed, and some other new technology and techniques to really make a great TV show. Then I saw it on the big screen as the first images came across, and I said, this is fantastic. This is too good to be a TV show. This should be a feature film. And so I said, why don't we make a feature film about Ahsoka, who's the new character, and introduce her? And so that's how it ended up doing an animated film. It was really out of the fact that I wanted to do something a little bit more lighthearted, that I could deal with other characters and also deal with the personal relationship, the growth between Anakin and Obi-Wan. But it turned into an animated feature film. Well, we developed photorealistic CG a long time ago, basically with Jurassic Park. We were able to develop it so it looked photoreal. We use photoreal in all kinds of stuff. We also, since really Phantom Menace, we have photoreal actors who look exactly like the real actors. And we use them interchangeably, and most people don't know the difference. They don't act. They usually do stunts because it's very hard to get computer animation to act. It doesn't know how. So you need very talented actors to do the voices. You need very talented actors to be the animators. It's much easier just to use an actor. I don't believe the job of CG animation is to create animation that looks realistic, because that's what live action movies are for. The charm of an animated film is the fact that it's done in a particular style, an artistic style. In this case, we went retro into the 50s and 60s and used the style of Jerry Anderson, who did a TV series during that period called Thunderbirds. And they were marionettes. And so you'll notice on this thing, you see the paint on the characters. They've been painted. They're painted characters or not. And they're very, very, very stylized. And I think that's what animation does best. It's the thing that it can do that live action can't do. And so we moved technology forward in a lot of different ways to be able to get very, very high quality for very limited resources, which is what you have on television. But at the same time, it turned out so great that when I saw it for the first time on the big screen, I said, this is brilliant. I mean, we could make a feature out of this. And so we decided to do a feature about Ahsoka, and that's how it ended up being a feature film.
All right, yeah. So there you have it from the maker himself, talking about Star Wars: The Clone Wars and why he did it, and why they did it in that particular style. And so basically, if you've ever heard of the term Star Wars canon, or if you know what kind of canon is, you'll know that canon is like kind of the core story, right? Like anything that actually has relevance to the current narrative, that is kind of the solid pillar. So Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which is the CG animated show that's been going on for a very long time, that is the canon story. The 2D animated Star Wars Clone Wars, which was the Clone Wars' predecessing show, it was just a micro series. Almost in a way, it was almost like a good test run to see how well or successful the show would be. And people actually still really love that show. People still really like the art style and just the simplicity and everything like that. So I mean, nothing wrong with that, but it's no longer canon. It's actually it's just cool to watch. So if you do enjoy that, then that's great. I actually had the DVDs of those as well back in the day when those came out, and it's a great place to just kind of get the idea for what exactly the action was looking like between the shows, but there's not a lot of dialogue in those. And Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which is the show that we have just finished on Disney Plus, the last season finally came out. That show it's such a great in-depth experience into the characters of Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, even Yoda, and we get a little bit more on Mace Windu and some of the Jedi that you see die in Order 66. Like you get to hear their voice and see moments of theirs that stand out to you as a memory. And it really makes Order 66 so much more sad, because after watching this show, you kind of like get to know these characters and the relationships that they have with each other and with these clones, and to watch this terrible event happen on screen of these clone troopers, these loyal soldiers, just flip of the switch, turn their back on their generals, on their Jedi. That it's incredibly sad. And a huge moment for the galaxy as well. But yeah, such a great show. And of course we got new characters which showed up as well, like the likes of Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex, two focus characters within the series who have made it to just such a high point of fandom popularity. It's insane how many people have fallen in love with these characters. The amount of people that dress up as Ahsoka on Halloween or at conventions, it's crazy. Like it's truly amazing how this show started out. It also started out at a certain level of quality, which has been improved over the years, but just the respect that this show has obtained, it's nothing short of like a miracle. Because when this show started, like there's a lot of people not too fond of Ahsoka Tano's character. There was a lot of people not too fond of the story or even the show's existence in the first place. But, as time goes by, I think a lot more people started just trying it out, getting the feels. And, truly it answers so many questions. It's become a solid anchor in Star Wars, unlike any of the other animated shows have. It's become this real, almost essential to watch in a way. I mean, if you have any criticism towards the films, or if you want to get to know more about Star Wars from a lore perspective or anything, like this is the best place to start. The Clone Wars is truly just such a great anchor for all that stuff. So, I mean, not only do you get the answers to all the questions that the prequels pose, like the Sifo Dyas question, like where the clone army comes from, who's behind everything, even the existence of and the resurrection of Darth Maul, like Maul popped up in Solo at the very end of that movie. Sorry if you haven't seen Solo. I mean, I think by now most people have probably seen it, but yeah, like everyone was like, oh, what the heck, how was he here? And it's like, well, the answer is in the Clone Wars. Like the there's so much there. If you've seen The Mandalorian, you might be wondering what that black lightsaber was. That's called the dark saber. That was also a thing that came out of the Clone Wars. There's so many things. You also got if you love Boba Fett, you got the story of how young Boba Fett made his way through the Clone Wars and kind of became a notorious bounty hunter himself. There was characters like Aura Singh. That was a name that was mentioned in Solo. She had a cameo appearance in The Phantom Menace, a bounty hunter who apparently died between the films. That was a subtle mention, but you get more about her. If you love Bosk, if you love the character of Bosk, the lizard bounty hunter on the Star Destroyer in Episode 5, you get more of him. You get more of the scum and villainy of the galaxy. Characters like Hondo Ohnaka, Jabba the Hutt. You get so much, and also just like insight into the Force. Like Qui-Gon Jinn's immortality and the lessons that he teaches Yoda, and how to pass that knowledge on to somebody else to become one with the Force after death. How that affects the story and the characters. Liam Neeson reprises his role. Spoiler alert. But I mean, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's just so golden. And the show starts off in a very humble way. Like you don't expect it to ever get to the depth that it actually does when you first start watching. But truly it does. And It's unlike any other Star Wars story out there. It's the longest running Star Wars story, and it's the most expansive Star Wars story. And in a way, I mean, it's one of the original storylines ever. I mean, like this dates all the way back to A New Hope when Luke drops that little subtle reference about the Clone Wars. I mean, this story, arguably enough, is one of the most amazing, important, must-watch stories of Star Wars as a whole. And I know it's a lot of seasons, a lot of episodes to get through, but I mean, right now is no better time. I mean, everyone's inside, stuck inside, all that stuff, due to COVID. A year from now, if everyone's listening to this episode and you hear, or maybe 20 years from now, this is going to be a historical global moment for us. Every online media just talking about COVID and isolation and all that. But yeah, like if like right now is no better time. I mean, if you're at home and you've got like 20 minutes a day to just sit down and watch an episode, just do it. Like I mean, like one a day, you're gonna get into it and you're gonna love it. I guarantee. There's very, very, very few people out there that I've met that don't like the Clone Wars and can truly say that in having watched its entirety. Because it's not fair enough to watch one season and say that it sucks, because it's just not true. It's not fair. So give it a chance. Watch the whole thing. Make your mind up on kind of how you feel, and I would love to hear about it. If you want to tweet to the show or send an email about it, those are in the description. And let me know what you think. What's your favorite arc? All that stuff. But yeah, like real quick, just I think if there's anything that you guys can take away from kind of this big question of like, what is the Clone Wars? You can listen to this episode of the podcast over and over again, but truly the best way to fully understand and appreciate this story is to watch it for yourself. And we are doing a Clone Wars talk series right now. So you've probably been seeing a lot of podcast episodes pop up saying Clone Wars talk part number, like 15 or 24 or whatever. We're getting to what I'm doing is I'm going through with our co-host on the show. His name's Diego. So him and I are basically watching the show in chronological order, and we're going through and then chatting about the episodes right after we watch them. So that way the memory's like fresh, and we're able to kind of break it down a bit. And I've actually kind of seen a growth in him over the show as well. Like as a Star Wars fan, he's just gotten to know so much more. He's able to kind of see deeper things other than just visually kind of what he's seeing on screen. He's able to see more of the theme, the underlying message, and the connections that it has to the films as well, which is really awesome. So yeah, if you are planning on going through the show, we're doing that thing. It's almost like an after show. So basically you watch the show or the episodes that we got listed in the description of the episode, and then you listen to us chat about it, break it down if you want, which is pretty fun. It's a fun way of doing it. And we're trying to keep all the episodes between like 45 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and a half at the very most. So yeah, if you're wanting to hop into the Clone Wars, you're welcome to join us on that adventure, which has been really fun so far. At the time of this recording, we are halfway through almost season 5. And as you know, there's about 7 seasons in total. As of May the 4th, 2020, the very last episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars dropped online on Disney+. So we're at the point now which I'm going to give you the sad news and talk a little bit about the Clone Wars as a production and kind of the struggles that it went through to actually get us this finale. So when George Lucas sold the company, he sold everything. He sold Star Wars, Lucasfilm, for $4 billion, and then made the man quite rich. Unfortunately, Disney had the audacity to kill off the Clone Wars, and fans were really upset. We had 5 full seasons at the time, and we were between seasons, and we were waiting eagerly for season 6 to come out. And this news came out that the show was getting canceled, and they basically said 12 episodes of the Clone Wars exist. I think it was 12 around there. 12 fully finished episodes exist. We're going to drop those on Netflix for everyone to watch. The Blu-ray came out eventually way later after, which was subtitled as The Lost Missions. But basically, fans were missing the rest of season 6, a full season 7, and a full season 8. The show was supposed to go 8 seasons long. And that's kind of the most important part that I'm going to talk about right now, is the incompletion of the story despite having the finale. So you can watch the show in its quote unquote entirety, but there are things that were supposed to be in the show that we still never got. And, due to books and comics or whatever, hopefully we get those stories adapted at some point in the future. But the rest of season 6 at the time was released online as the other half, that is, as a set of proxy episodes, set of proxy animation, and those had all the dialogue and the basic outline and idea for the story. So there was a couple arcs that we were able to watch in that format, which was the Bad Batch arc and the Crystal Crisis on Utapau arc. Those were 8 episodes in total, and I believe that might have been it. Let me just look this up so I'm not giving you wrong information here. There was oh, that's right, yeah. Okay, so we also had some episodes which were later on adapted after that as well. So season 6 had the 12 finished episodes on Netflix and on which dropped on Blu-ray as well, and then we had the proxy episode animations to go along with that, which basically made the rest of season 6 at the time. Then we had the incompleted season 7 and 8. Some of those episodes, thankfully, have dropped on another format of some kind. So we had an arc of episodes, 4 episodes, called Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir. They were adapted into a canon comic book, which covered those 4 episodes based in season 7, I believe it was, around Darth Maul's story at that point in the show, because he did make an appearance earlier on in the show, and the story had built up to this moment where then we never got those stories told on like what happens in between now what is season 6 and 7. At the time it was supposed to be season 7 storyline. So if you want to watch the Clone Wars, basically watch seasons 1 through 6. Oh, and the theatrical movie, of course. And there's a special order to do that in, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But though that comic book is kind of essential. So look for Star Wars Son of Dathomir, the trade paperback. Rent that from your library, or maybe you can get the digital copies or pick it up at a bookstore. I know you can order online these days, pretty easily with the Indigo or Barnes & Noble or whatever you're using. Highly recommend those stories to read. And we had 8 episodes, which were the completion to a lovely character that we got in the show called Asajj Ventress, who's Dooku's assassin. Her story arc completes with a canon novel called Star Wars Dark Disciple. And Dark Disciple adapted 8 episode arc scripts into an adult or young adult or adult novel, basically, which told that story in its completion as well. So between the novel and Son of Dathomir, between Dark Disciple and Son of Dathomir, we basically got just over half of season 7 in another format there, just through literature. And then some clips online about some of those future episodes were released at Celebration. You can find those on YouTube. There were some proxy animated clips that Dave Filoni released, which had something to do with Boba Fett and an arc that he had about how he gets the dented helmet, how Cad Bane no longer is the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, who is a primary bounty hunter at this point in the show. all this stuff. There was a couple story arcs which I really wish we got, which we never did get. There was also a Yoda arc who he would have gone to Kashyyyk prior to episode 3 and established a relationship with the Wookiees there, which is why he actually mentions that he's got a good relation with the Wookiee, which is why he goes back there again to defend them against the droid armies. But there was all these stories that would have taken place in season 7 and in season 8. And fortunately, 2 of those arcs in season 8 we did get finished, along with the proxy animated arc Bad Batch from season 6. These were all adapted into final completed animated episodes, which then became what we know as season 7 on Disney Plus. So season 7 is the Bad Batch arc in its final format, in fully animated glory, all that stuff. They've made a few minor changes to those stories as well to accommodate the gap in the show. And then we had another arc after that called, it's basically Ahsoka's Walkabout arc. It covers a story of Ahsoka on her own after certain events have led her to a very different shift in her life. And then the final arc in the show is the Outer Rim sieges that Obi-Wan and Anakin refer to in Revenge of the Sith. And the Outer Rim sieges is also the Siege of Mandalore. So that was the final arc in season 7, which would have been the final arc in season 8, mind you. However, we did actually, at least we got it. At least we got the last arc of the show, despite having all this other missed content. So there is, if you're wondering, there is a proper way to get through all this material. And you can find the chronological episode order on StarWars.com. There's a way to do it. The link I'm going to post in the description of this podcast episode. And you basically want to go down the list and watch them in that particular order. You can print off the list and cross them off if you have to give you kind of the idea of how this is. The first thing you watch is season 2, episode 16. The second thing you watch is season 1, episode 16. Then you watch the animated Clone Wars theatrical release movie. Then you watch season 3, episode 1, season 3, episode 3, and the list goes on from there. So it's really weird, and people always ask me why that is. Basically, during the course of the show, who knows if it's George's idea or Dave Filoni's idea, whatever. I have no idea, but the proper way to watch the show is in that order. They just figured, hey, we can do an episode that takes place before that episode. And, we'll just, because the Clone Wars had their very classic, every episode you get a flashback of what happens before that episode. So I guess they figured people will know having seen the previous episode. So let's just do it this way. If you watch the Clone Wars in release order, you don't get the full experience of what the chronological order would give you. The release order can spoil a few things. Characters that die might just show up again for no reason at all. And it turns out it's because that episode actually takes place before another one. And it's just way too confusing to even bother me explaining any further past that. So if you are going through Star Wars: The Clone Wars, reference the list, get through that list until season 6, episode 13, throw in the Dark Disciple novel and the Son of Dathomir comic book, and then get around to season 7 to complete the show in its entirety. And it will be the most amazing Star Wars experience that you've had in a very long time, I assure you. So good luck with all that stuff. And I hope you guys are enjoying the Clone Wars Talk series that we've been doing. If you haven't been listening to those, it's a great way to catch up on the Clone Wars and also to follow along with us at home. So if you're trying to get a friend to watch the Clone Wars and they're not jumping on board very well, they're not playing ball, maybe send this episode to them. Just be like, hey, here's a reason why you should watch Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And, truly, it's like it's one of the most authentic Star Wars experiences that they're ever going to have, right? I mean, this is the last thing that George Lucas did before he sold the company. And it's a story that he's been wanting to tell for a very long time. So why not, right? And, you get that brotherhood relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker, the one that you never got in the movies too much because, they were too busy bantering or off in different places. So quite frankly, you have like there's so many reasons to enjoy and watch this show. Like if you've never seen it before and you love Star Wars, like just like I don't know why you're not watching it already. Like just turn it on. Just turn it on. But yeah, like you know, enjoy the show. Enjoy our after show. If you want to tune in for that, would be happy to take you through. And the last thing is do it chronologically, because that's like the best way to do it. That's the best way to enjoy the show. So that being said, thanks again for tuning into the show. If you've never been here before, then it's been a pleasure to have you listen. Be sure to send this to a friend, and if you can, guys, please drop a 5-star review, because that helps us get found a little more in the search results, and that would help us out quite a bit. We don't exactly do donations or Patreon or anything like that. Like nothing we do has any profit. So like the only way to help us out is pretty much to just leave a great review or a nice 5-star. Like that's truly the only way that you guys can help us out, and it takes like 3 seconds. So if you're able to do that, please, that would be awesome. And again, links are all in the description below. If you're using Apple Podcasts, I believe Google Podcast does this, but the hyperlinks should be lit up in the description that you can just click on them, and they should take you where you need to go. Otherwise, I'm sorry, you have to type it in manually, but it's there if you need it. So we're on every platform. We're on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google Play, wherever you can find podcasts, we are there. Castbox, just everything. Just name it. If we're not on it, let us know, because we want to get on it so that we can be on whatever platform you use to cater to your ears as best as possible. So let us know if you were not on the favorite platform that you typically use, or if you're switching to, or whatever. That would be amazing for us to know. So I hope you guys are doing well, staying safe out there. Enjoy the Clone Wars. Once again, I'm your host, Josh, and may the Force be with you. See you next time. And watch Star Wars: The Clone Wars.